Okay. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our January 28, 2021 meeting of the Subcommittee on Higher Education. We have a very important but relatively short agenda for this meeting. First, we are delighted to have Virginia Commonwealth University President Rao and Virginia State University President Abdullah representing the public institutions in their current roles as chair and vice chair of the Council of Presidents. I understand they have also brought to the Zoom a few finance and other folks from other institutions along. If we have detailed questions on COVID-19 impacts and operations. So we will begin with their presentations, which will then be followed by Sarah Herzog on our staff, who will provide an overview of the member requested budget amendments that have been submitted in the area of higher education. So we will begin with our presidents with their presentations.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, members of the committee. We're so grateful to have this opportunity to speak with you. So Makola and I are obviously here in our service as chair and vice chair of the statewide Virginia public 4-year and 2-year institutions. And so first we want to start out by saying thank you. Your financial support has been unbelievably helpful to us, and the flexibility you offered us has also been incredibly useful. You did this during your special session, you did it rapidly, and you recognized what was going on with higher education. It was hard for us to pivot, but we did pivot, and candidly, you responded with actions that really helped us to address our most immediate and urgent needs for our students, many of whom were very challenged by what went on, along with supporting our faculty, staff, and others who helped take care of our students. They're at the core of our mission, and of course, the center of our focus and attention. So we're really grateful for that. As we focus now a little more toward the second year of the biennium, we're looking at the situation for FY or fiscal year 2022, and we think it looks pretty precarious, and we know it does, as a matter of fact, and not only for higher education institutions, but also for the students and families that we serve. So, you know, to keep our students safe and to keep instruction robust, we have obviously incurred tremendous expenses that we had not anticipated or planned for. And it's happened even as enrollment has continued to take a dive on most of our campuses. And of course, revenues have declined on most of our campuses. Both in-state and out-of-state tuition revenues are down at most of our places. And auxiliary revenues are down 400 million across the system. And that's pretty much all of our campuses. So you can imagine if dormitory occupancy is down, students aren't paying, you're losing all of that revenue. Those auxiliary funds, like, you know, ticket sales, bookstores, and all those royalties on clothing and those sorts of things, you know, we have survived, a lot of us, on those resources, and we really have none of it now in comparison to where we were. There's a little bit, but it's very little. Dining halls and so on. Federal help has been very helpful. It has covered a fraction of the gap. Future stimulus funds will provide some of the temporary relief that we need, but a really large portion of this is going to go to private institutions. And we've really become, with the CARES Act funding, a pass-through for about half of that money, because those dollars should go to our students, and that's what we need to be doing. But the rest are consumed immediately by the losses that we've taken. And of course, we have losses beyond the amounts that we have seen reimbursement for. We're grateful for what we've seen, and we're grateful for your passing that on to us and approving that. And that's been great. But the burdens on our students and their families has been the toughest when they can least afford it. Because remember, the pandemic has disproportionately hit a lot of people who had part-time jobs and had less to begin with. And, you know, those are the students who have the highest need. And so to do that, to help deal with that and address that, Many of us have avoided or minimized tuition increases to help make up the difference. The challenge is that in Virginia, just generally speaking, among all of our institutions, we're relatively high tuition, we're relatively low appropriation, but we're also relatively low financial aid. So that's a formula for a lot of debt that a lot of our students walk out with. And that, of course, has been a real challenge. So I'll turn it over now to you, Makola, to talk a little bit more about some of the areas that we discussed, and then I'll come back to you again here and talk a little bit about COVID-19 in greater specificity. Makola? Makola, you're on mute.
I always say all of my best stuff when I'm on mute, all the time. Thank you very much, Mike. I think it's also important to note that whether our students are on campus or online, that we all have fixed costs that need to be addressed. And we're uniquely in that position at Virginia State. Right now, of course, we're moving in students and we start classes next week. But last semester, we were one of the few public institutions to decide not to have students back on campus. And so we're very well aware that many of our fixed costs, including compensation, which faculty and staff, of course, are our biggest expense, facilities, scholarships, support services that are required by our regional accreditors in order to provide a comparable student experience for those online and on campus. Those support services, of course, include advising and counseling, health services, tutoring, libraries, career services, and student organizations and activities. And so despite the dire financial fiscal challenges that face us, we know that we play a pivotal role in leading the Commonwealth's recovery. In the transformed economic reality in which we find ourselves, many will need the skills that we provide. We're also uniquely positioned for the task of envisioning a changed world, enabling us to emerge from the crisis resilient and stronger than before. The Council of Presidents, where Mike is the chair, we work very closely together. I think that's been one of the great benefits of the pandemic. We believe that we're ahead of the curve, that we're already thinking about what the post-pandemic world will look like, how things will be different, and how things will continue to be different, like this session here, and how we're much more adept now at doing things virtual. And I think that some of that, of course, will remain even after COVID is over. To play that role to the fullest, we really need to ensure fiscal stability and restore funding approved prior to the onset of the COVID-19, and adding new investment to offset the harmful financial effects of the health crisis and the recession. Now more than ever, investment in higher education is a matter of equity and opportunity for many low and middle income students, many first generation college goers, and other underrepresented young and adult learners. Increased state support for higher education can change lives. The financial aid funds in the introduced budget are important to these students, but we need additional funding to meet our near-term fiscal challenges, including the direct and indirect costs and revenue losses as a result of COVID-19. And so as we go to the Unified Budget Amendment for higher education, it really has three components: sustained support, one-time support, and additional operational relief. In terms of sustained support, most importantly, we ask that you make permanent the flexible one-time support from special session, so that the $60 million for all institutions in FY21 is continued in FY22 with added funds for George Mason University and Old Dominion. Additionally, we're asking for $65 million in general fund support in FY22 to address unavoidable cost increases and affordability. In terms of one-time support, our funding request includes a $34.5 million one-time support for COVID-19 testing, which would allow us to prevalence test 5% of our students weekly. As Dr. Rao will ultimately highlight momentarily, many institutions' testing efforts have far exceeded this benchmark. And then third, additional operation relief. Finally, we seek language that will provide relief from certain procurement and reporting requirements to provide institutions with additional flexibility and to generate cost savings. Operational relief can be provided in two areas: athletics and procurement. In athletics, recognizing the anomalies resulting from the pandemic, to exclude FY20, FY21, and FY22 in calculating the adherence to the level of institutional support for athletics. And then for procurement, to improve supply diversity by creating more pathways to SWAM certification, including to include vendors that meet federal designation or other states' designations, and to reduce advertising costs to conform language for Tier 2 and Tier 3 institutions to current language for all the other state agencies, eliminating the requirement for posting newspaper ads for procurement. And so I'll also share with you that we have heard from the business leaders via the Business Higher Ed Council who are supportive of these funding priorities. You probably have seen their letter, and we believe that you may be hearing from them directly. Mike, I'll turn it back over to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Makola. Makola's been such a wonderful partner. Actually, all of the presidents have been great partners, and we have stuck together very tightly through this entire thing. I have to tell you, I know I have sat here with my colleagues and learned so much about every one of our institutions and how the colleges and universities have responded to the pandemic, so much more than I could have imagined 10 months ago. You know, if you think about the faculty research and expertise across the state and the range of pandemic topics that they have really dug deeply into, you know, one is a good example is the research on face coverings and aerosol spread at Virginia Tech has been very helpful to all of us. It's actually helped the nation, if not the world. And then the outbreak modeling by the University of Virginia, our Biocomplexity Institute there. And we've all supported local health districts with testing, with tests, providing tests, with vaccinations now, of course, with phone banks, facilities, volunteers. A lot of our students have been those volunteers, public health messaging campaigns to help get the messaging out, and our partnership with VDH and with local health departments. We've, I think, in so many ways, really revolutionized teaching and learning with a lot of reinvention of courses with great digital media that now will accommodate all kinds of learning styles. I had a chance to talk with you, Madam Chair, Madam Locke, about Chair Locke, about the incredible advances that we've been able to make with our students. Changes and flexibilities with our academic calendar, shifting modalities in many different directions, and of course, mobilize manufacturing and engineering capacity to help solve a lot of challenges, which you remember were around PPE or personal protective equipment, ventilators, testing, and lots of examples, you know, that of things at VCU. We came up with actually an orthopedic surgeon came up with a really great idea around an innovative N95 mask decontamination process. We had to do that. If we hadn't, we would have run out of them, and we would have run out of them at UVA too. But we shared that same thing at UVA, and of course that helped us get through. At James Madison, we had faculty work on 3D printed face shields, which were very timely and helpful, and making hand sanitizer. We retasked our IHE workforce, our higher education workforce, basically to help support not just campus responses for COVID-19, but really often community responses. We've collaborated like we've never collaborated for a long time. Right after March, we were meeting weekly until just recently, and now we're meeting monthly, but these are very substantive meetings. The collaboration across the presidents is tremendous. This is the best group of presidents I've worked with in 27 years of service as a president. I'm really proud of my colleagues. This has really helped us to address really difficult, gritty issues like dashboards and communication, to make it consistent across our institutions, to make it consistent with what VDH wanted to do. We've been able to help transform the nature of work through extensive telework arrangements, great new IT systems that we've created, and of course the creation of digital processes. We even think that at most of our institutions, we're going to help really mastering what I'll call the work from home approach, which may be here forever now. And we found some efficiencies that are really valuable and could be useful here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We've stood up healthcare capabilities at nearly every campus for testing, quarantine, and isolation. Some of our residence halls have been used for that. Telehealth, prevention, wellness, and of course, mental health. This has been an unusual strain, and we've seen a lot of people who we didn't realize were so close to the edge go over the edge because of what's gone on. And so I'm very, very proud of our campuses. The stories go on, and I, of course, can't give you all of the stories, but I'm picking some of the examples that make me the most proud. And of course, several of us are now playing significant roles as safety net hospitals, UVA and VCU in particular, around the distribution of vaccines. We've rewritten a lot of our student handbooks with extensive policies and procedures to help modify behavior of our students, because we knew that we would need to do some of that. By the way, our campuses have unbelievably compliant students. They have modeled the very, very best of what I have seen any place when I have traveled or had to travel or been around. People just refusing to wear masks and such. That's not our students, and it's not been our team members on our campuses. In fact, if you look at where many of our campuses have had students in large numbers, like at VCU, where we've had about 5,000 students at a time on campus, our positivity rate, with a lot more testing than in most communities, was way, way, way lower than you had seen in any of our communities. So my argument is that our campuses are actually the safest places that you could be of any place that I know. And so we have continued to focus on mitigating risk and protecting our communities and setting good examples for our communities. We've really rebuilt our campuses for social distancing that we know is going to be around for a while. We have an infectious disease department right here that has advised us all the way through. And they've said, you know, we have vaccines and we are, of course, going to get some herd immunity, but this is the effects of this will be around for a while, and we'll need to mitigate risks and necessary changes to ensure that we have the maximum utilization of our campuses as best we can and as safely as we can. In fact, at JMU, there was an old gymnasium that was retrofitted and turned into a homeless shelter. We forged new partnerships with local governments and public safety that we've been able to provide. We've worked with health districts. We worked with public safety organizations, and of course, with healthcare systems as well. I'm really proud as well of Old Dominion University's Modeling, Analysis, and Simulation Center that's been in partnership with Centera Healthcare. They developed what they call Connect, which is a blockchain that's empowered to digital, and that's empowered digital contact tracing. It's become a platform, basically. So most of our institutions, including 17 of our community colleges, have actually offered space for vaccination. That's a big issue in a lot of our health districts, very, very challenging for them. And of course, our local health districts are holding vaccination clinics at 22 of our campuses, including 14 of our community colleges. 20 of our institutions have offered vaccinators for from their health professions programs and health services students and faculty as well. 7 of our local health districts have taken us up on those offers. And we've worked really hard with Senator Donovan on her student vaccinator bill. And our medical students are going to play a major role in increasing the number of eligible volunteers to distribute vaccines. By the way, at VCU, 300 of our pharmacy students are certified vaccinators, it's a process we really thought through and worked hard on to be sure that they would be ready and, of course, keep people safe. We've offered to be direct vaccine providers, and at least 5 of our local health districts have taken our schools up on that. The other thing I heard the other day when we had our meeting on Monday, I think it was, Macola, the president of Radford told us about the ultra low temperature freezers that they provided to their local health district so they could actually receive the vaccine. They didn't have that. So we're sharing our resources in every way that we possibly can. And of course, one of the most important resources is the expertise that we have about viruses and vaccines and public health more generally. So we'll continue to do all of that. We'll set up calls for our local health districts and and all of that. Hey, listen, this has not been easy. It's probably, in all my 27 years of service as a president, this is the most unusual year, this year and last year. It's also a very motivating year. We know we're needed. We know that we play more of a role than just educating students and putting them out into our communities with bachelor's degrees, doctors, nurses, law degrees, and so on and so forth. We have become a part of our communities more than ever before, and we're leveraging all of the resources that we have. It's been a difficult time, but I want to say that on behalf of the public higher education sector, we've been so resilient, and we've really risen to the occasion. And we are so grateful for your support. You came right in and took care of us, and we are so grateful for that. As stewards of your institution, we're of course here respectfully to request continued support as our partners. And we thank you so much for what you have done. We're looking forward to go ahead, take your universities and colleges ahead to the next level, and really want to have a conversation with you, answer questions that you might have, or if it's helpful, get out of your way, whatever is useful to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Warren, Dr. Abdallah. Are there any questions to our two presidents? Any members here? And I know Senator Norman is on the Zoom.
Well, Madam Chairman, you shouldn't have mentioned my name because you know I always have a question.
I tried not to, but
I know, but I love you, dear. I don't think, Mr. President, thank you for your presentation, and I continue to be very passionate about higher ed in Virginia. I don't think any of us have the crystal ball to know what the new norm is going to be. Is your university comprehensively doing an across-the-board examination on where you think you could permanently reduce costs, whether it's programmatic, auxiliaries, constraint on enrollment?
Yeah, so Senator, did you want Makola, or would you prefer that I respond, or both?
Well, you're on the screen, so I'd like to hear from you, sir.
Okay, so I can see everybody on my screen. I don't just have one screen. So in any case, I couldn't tell who was up on the screen. But so Senator, yes, we are. In fact, that is something that I've called for. In fact, our CFO, Carol Gray, told me that they had one of their first meetings today of our budget committee to talk about some of that. What I said to our faculty in a faculty meeting on Tuesday night is, as difficult as it is, students are changing very rapidly. Their interests and needs are changing, not just because they're changing and generations are changing, but also because the pandemic is changing us. It's accelerating some good things, and it's also pushing up against some difficult things that we need to stop doing and investing in that aren't of great interest to students or great need to students. And so resources are going to have to shift. And so I do anticipate significant shifts in resources over time. And candidly, when you don't have a lot of new money, that's what you have to do if you're responsible in a leadership role. People don't like it. It's uncomfortable, but we are going to have to move money around. One good example is where students have been in the past and may have had needs in student affairs. It'll be different kinds of needs. One of the needs that's bigger than it's ever been is the counseling center. Well, counseling centers in the past were needed, but not as needed as they are now. And we need to put more money from some of the services where we used to have them, and may not need them as much, like frontline services, because you have technology and ways in which to use your phone to register and such, where we may need to just put more money into the human resources of counseling psychology and helping students deal with, unusual levels of anxiety that they may be experiencing because of what's going on. So yes, I don't know that I speak for every campus, but I'm sure that it is inevitable for every campus that we're all going to have to be thinking about this. We certainly are, and I'm leading that way because I know it's necessary.
Madam Chairman, thank you. Madam Chairman has heard my editorial comment before, but I would hope that in your discussions with your colleagues on the Council of Presidents that you would say or remind them at least one senator who is an advocate for higher education continues to be concerned about the ever expansion of new curriculums as some of your other schools want to remain competitive. And I've long said, in Virginia, we don't need 7 engineering schools, but I understand the competitiveness of it. And as long as I have the privilege of continuing to serve, and if Madam Chair doesn't fire me from this committee, it'll be a message I'll deliver. But I appreciate your courtesies.
Yes, sir. And Senator, I would just add that even today, a number of us as presidents had a meeting in which we talked about the importance of looking at academic programs and determining how many of them really are as engaged with the fields that students will leave those programs from and go out to. We really do need to adopt more of a co-op model statewide so that our students, one of the things that does for you is if you can't make a co-op happen, it may be that an academic program really isn't going to fit, right, to the needs of students. So yeah, we had a long talk about that today, and I think we need to make a long, hard effort toward some progress in that direction. That's what students want. It's what parents want. It's what employers want. We've got to be more connected to employers with the expertise of our faculty, of course, so that we can bring them along in that process. But we are going to have to change. And I do anticipate in the next few years, you're going to see pressure on some academic programs to go away. And you're going to see some pressure for some academic programs to show up or be recycled in different ways that are more in keeping with what students need. And, I used to use the word relevancy 20 some years ago, and people would say, oh, that's terrible. You can't say that in higher education. I say it now and everybody's like, yeah, that's what we need to be doing.
Well, thank you.
Madam Chairman, thank you very much, Mr. President. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Yes,
Senator
sir.
Norman. And thank you, President Rao. Thank you, President Abdullah, for your presentation this afternoon. And thank you for all the work that you're doing with the Council of Presidents, and thank all of the presidents for all that they're doing through this unusual time period to keep all of our campuses safe.
Yes, ma'am. And thank you so much for your continued support, but also for your service to our state. None of you are terribly well rewarded for everything that you're putting in, and we are all grateful. I know I speak on behalf of all of the presidents of the universities and colleges. Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll now move to our second part of our agenda, which is Sarah will provide us with an overview of the requested budget amendments from our members.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the second agenda item, you have 2 sets of materials. One is a 2-page summary table of the 42 amendments that were presented, and then also the half sheets, which is 20-some odd pages. And I will just walk through the table. It has line numbers for your reference for the 42 items, and then the second column refers to the page numbers in the half sheet document. The first several are all under State Council of Higher Education for Virginia or SHEV, either in the agency itself or under the financial aid items that are budgeted under SHEV. So first, on the top of page 1 is Senator Saslaw's amendment, which is a total of $1 million related to the Virginia Military Survivors Dependent Program. This is a restoration from the 2020 session that was included in the introduced budget and not changed until it was unallotted during the special session and then reduced. The bottom of page 1, Senator Ruff's language amendment related to TAG, Tuition Assistance Grant awards for students at private institutions, and it updates the language so that the maximum award could be up to $4,500. There's no additional language. This is intended to provide additional flexibility should there be volatility in enrollment next year. As you recall, in the 2020 session, the award amount was increased from $3,500. The top of page 2 is another restoration of guidance to post-secondary success initiative at SHEV, focusing on student transitions from high school to post-secondary, especially with regard to inequitable outcomes. SHEV will work with the Department of Education, and these funds would be used as a match for an upcoming grant for the Gear Up program. At the bottom of page 2 to page 3 is a restoration of funding from 2020 for the Virtual Library of Virginia. The special session actually included the FY21 amounts, and this would also restore the FY22 amounts. On page 3 to 4, Senator Saslaw's amendment, which would restore funding and the language for a cost study that SHEV would coordinate, comprehensively looking at higher education costs, funding needs, appropriations, and efficiencies, with some detail on various components, and a preliminary date in 2021 and a final report by July 2022. Pages 4 and 5 is funding under SHEV up to $200,000 related to Senate Bill 1387, which the committee heard this week, regarding the eligibility of students without regard to citizenship or immigration status for financial aid. The prior year was focused on in-state tuition eligibility. And this would allow SHEV to begin to implement the provisions, since they would need different systems for these students, because there would be a need for financial aid information that is not currently collected for financial aid. On page 5 is a request for $500,000 for a cultural education program at Sweetbriar College related to the Department of Historic Resources and teaching trade skills in restoring historic structures. Page 5 is a language amendment related to allowing the Office of the Workforce Development Advisor access to wage outcome records that SHEV has under their existing authority. Those are the amendments related to SHEV or financial aid, and now beginning with the institution-specific items. Pages 5 and 6 is the first item related to Christopher Newport University. The first proposes $2.8 million in the second year, which would continue into FY22 the amount for CNU from the FY21 one-time amounts from the special session and the conference report, plus an increase of $400,000 above that amount. The next on page 6 is Senator Locke's amendment for CNU for O&M, operations and maintenance costs for the new Fine Arts Center, which is due to open in the summer of 2021, with classes beginning in the fall. $1 million general funds as well as the non-general funds. Pages 6 to 7 is for 2 programs related to early access at Christopher Newport University, underrepresented high school students and community college transfer students, and this was proposed as a performance pilot in the prior year. Turning to College of William & Mary, beginning on page 7, is $1.5 million general fund in the second year to begin to grow the pipeline of underrepresented minority faculty in data science related to the new data science major at the college. Page 8 is a language amendment for Richard Bland College, which updates and makes some other revisions to their authority to explore partnerships, including adding language related to identifying partners to pursue shared services, and also identifying partners to strategically merge and align academic programming. Pages 6 to page 7 is an amendment for Virginia Institute of Marine Science, similar to the one for the College of William & Mary. It's $450,000 in the second year to increase underrepresented minority postdoctoral research associates, given the low number of PhDs awarded in the marine science area nationally each year. The next 2 items are also related to VIMS and are restorations of items that had been included in the Senate budget and the conference report in 2020. First is $225,000 for managing aquatic diseases, and the next is $250,000 each year related to restoring saltwater fisheries surveys due to some changes in federal funds. The bottom of page 10 is the request for $5 million for James Madison University related to their ongoing enrollment growth over time. Then on page 11 is Senator Lucas's amendment for a new joint school of public health. This is the portion related to Norfolk State University. There is also a similar amendment for Old Dominion University, and also a set of both of these with the chief patron, Senator Locke. This is for $2.5 million each year for both universities as Old Dominion continues to pursue a path to accreditation for a School of Public Health, and Norfolk State would be involved in establishing a Master of Public Health and looking at health disparities. On page 11 to 12 is a language amendment related to Norfolk State University and out-of-state tuition. It requests that NSU can charge out-of-state undergraduate tuition at the 2019-20 levels until the in-state undergrad enrollment rebounds to the 13-14 levels. And the next on page 12 for Norfolk State University is additional funding, $262,000 related to mental health services for students, faculty, and staff. Pages 12 to 13 is Senator Locke's amendment for NSU for the Joint School of Public Health, and the two amendments for Old Dominion University for the Joint School of Public Health on pages 13 and 13 to 14. And then on page 14 is Senator Locke's amendment for $10 million for Radford University to address the disparity in tuition costs for students attending Radford University Carilion, to close the significant differential gap in tuition that existed between the two campuses prior to the merger. Page 14 is a request for $5.6 million each year for Mary Washington related to COVID costs for items such as testing, supplies, distance learning, PPE, teleworking, and some other components. On page 15 is a request for a restoration of an item that had been included in the Senate budget in 2020 for a workforce development initiative at University of Mary Washington involving K-12 and community colleges in certain areas, education, healthcare, and cybersecurity. Pages 15 to 16 is an amendment to support funding for a RISE program at Wilder School. This is Research Institute for Social Equity, with the goal of advancing social justice to inform public policy, governance, and practice to improve conditions for marginalized voices. Pages 16 to 17 is a $150,000 item for the Virginia Center for Aging, Virginia Commonwealth University. This is language and a restoration of amount that had been included in the special session. On page 17 is a community college item related to the Radford-Carilion merger. This relates to two associate's degree programs which would transfer to Virginia Western Community College, also a restoration of an item that had been included in 2020. Pages 17 to 18 is a language amendment directing the community college system to review coursework, supporting law enforcement officer training, and potential recommendations related to pay adjustments related to the additional training. Pages 18 to 19, Senator Saslaw's amendment for additional $5 million related to the new G3 program and language designating funds for marketing and outreach, also to include advising and additional advisors to support the program. Page 19 is amendment also under VCCS for almost $300,000 each year for a Shine Solar program at Southside Virginia Community College. Pages 19 through 20 under VCCS, this is a restoration of an item that had been included, although at a different dollar amount in 2020 in the Senate budget, for a small business assistance and youth entrepreneurship pilot involving community college, Portsmouth Public Schools, and other institutions in the area. The next two items related to Virginia Military Institute are also restorations of items from the 2020 budget that had been unallotted. about $100,000 each year for the core leadership course, and $126,000 by the second year for the math education and Miller Academic Centers. Page 21 is Senator Edwards' request for funding via Virginia Tech to support unique military activities of the Corps of Cadets there. Pages 21 through 22 is a $6.9 million amendment request for cooperative extension and agriculture experiment stations. This does include both one-time and ongoing costs, with the bulk of it being one-time costs. Less than $1 million is ongoing. It relates to 4 areas: internet connectivity, modernizing research equipment, adding personnel, and also addressing market competitiveness of the salaries. On page 22 is a restoration of base operating support for Eastern Virginia Medical School of $625,000 per year. Pages 22 to 23 is another restoration of an item from the 2020 session, $1 million for a new Virginia Rural IT Apprenticeship Program at Southwest Virginia Higher Education Center relating to legislation passed in a recent year. Page 23 is amendment for Mary Washington University to continue into FY22 the affordable access allocation from the special session conference report. And then pages 23 through 26 are the unified amendment that you heard about this afternoon. On page 24, the first column you see is a reiteration of the FY21 amounts that were in Chapter 56. And then in the second column there for FY22 would continue those and also add George Mason University and Old Dominion to that list. Paragraph B references the $35.5 million in the first year related to COVID costs. And then paragraph C references an additional $65.3 million for ongoing base adjustments. And then language begins in paragraph D with D1. Waiving reporting related to intercollegiate athletic revenues and expenses and student fees for FY20, 21, and 22. It's currently reported on a 5-year rolling average basis. Paragraph 2 would direct the Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity to create and streamline pathways for Virginia businesses to become certified as small women-owned and minority businesses. And then subparagraph 3 relates to advertising rules and updating them in the pursuant to the Virginia Public Procurement Act recent changes. And the last amendment is on page 26, which does cross 2 areas for general government and compensation, and this relates to the component of the bonus for faculty and staff bonuses, and this would specify that administrators and executive officers earning above a certain percentage would not be eligible for the $1,500 bonus and reflects associated savings. And Madam Chair, that completes the overview of the member amendments.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Are there questions?
Madam Chair,
Senator Edwards?
yeah, Sarah, we've talked about this. Those funding for the higher education centers, including the Roanoke Higher Education Center, that was unallotted, and apparently the governor's budget left that out. Can we take care of that?
Right. Yeah, so for this purposes, the spreadsheet is just the ones that were actually submitted. But in addition, another set of items that were in the 2020 budget and were not proposed to be restored were some amounts related to each of the centers. There is some funding in the introduced budget related to New College Institute and the rural IT item that I mentioned. And then there was also funding in 2020 for all of the centers as well. Thank you.
Other questions? We have a lot of work to do.
I have no comment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I was about to ask, because I couldn't believe it. Okay, anything else, sir?
No.
Okay. So if there's nothing further, we will be meeting shortly to continue our work with higher education. Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving us an awesome task.
I wish I could give you the money.
So thank you all. So we'll be meeting soon. That concludes our meeting.